Long-term care planning is a topic that is ignored by most financial advisors, especially financial advisors that just focus on the investment side of things. They'll say something like, well, we're just going to build your investments fast enough that you don't need to worry about it. You'll have so much money you can just pay for it out of pocket. Well, one of the golden rules of retirement is don't spend principal. So how do you accomplish $130,000 of additional cash flow in retirement without spending principal? Well, you've got to have an extra $2.6 million in your portfolio beyond what you need for producing your regular lifestyle income. Now, not everybody has an extra $2.6 million in their portfolio, so it's actually very important to put long-term care planning as part of any good financial plan. The good news is there's things that you can do regardless of your age and regardless of your income to effectively put barriers between your health and your wealth. In today's video, we're going to go over 6 different techniques, and we're going to just briefly touch on 3 other techniques. So a total of 9 different techniques, 9 different ways that you can put barriers between your health and your wealth. So that's the topic of today's video, long-term care planning. Some folks' long-term care plan involves having the kids take care of them. Well, there's some problems with this. First off, make sure the kids know that this is your long-term care plan and make sure that the kids agree to this. Also, it's not fair to ask one person to work 24/7 without pay and without a break. So if you're planning on having family members provide long-term care, make sure that you have at least 3 family members and pay them for the care that they provide. It's not fair to ask somebody to work for free, especially during their prime income earning years. So if you're going to be in your late 70s, 80s, early 90s receiving long-term care, then your kids are probably going to be in their 50s and 60s, their highest income earning years, and you don't want to take that away from them. So you want to make sure that you have at least 3 paid family members in order to have the family be taking care of long-term care. Other folks will say, well, I don't want to be a burden on the kids. I'm thinking of going into one of these continuing care retirement communities, one of these places where you pay a large move-in fee and then you also pay a monthly rent. Most people will finance that large move-in fee through the sale of their existing homes, and the monthly rent is easily covered by their income sources from Social Security and pensions and their investments. Well, over time, you start out usually in some type of cottage, and then you might graduate to an apartment, and then possibly assisted living, and then possibly long-term care. And the idea is that the monthly expense stays roughly the same through all of the stages. Now that way, it's budgetable, it's predictable, it's something that you can afford. There's many communities in Pennsylvania, all over the United States, frankly, that do this, and there's probably a couple of hundred variations on the theme of what I've just shared with you, but that is the basic theme: pay a large move-in fee and a monthly rent so it fits into the budget. So those are the continuing care retirement communities. Many retirees, though, myself included, you might have a large, messy hobby. Mine is working on classic cars, so I enjoy that, and I do as much of it as I can, and it takes up a lot of space and it makes a lot of mess. And I don't think my neighbors would enjoy having a 1930s Model A on blocks in the front yard of the retirement community. They probably wouldn't think it's as beautiful as I do. Well, if you're like that and you don't think a continuing care retirement community would be right for you, then you want to look into some of the different insurance techniques to put barriers between your health and your wealth so that you can stay in your home and still have the bills paid. The easiest insurance technique is using something that you've already got, which is life insurance. Many folks don't realize this, but most life insurance policies, especially if it's some type of permanent life insurance policy, has a long-term care benefit. It's an accelerated death benefit rider, ADBR for short, accelerated death benefit rider. What it does is it allows you to spend the death benefit, which is the big number, not the cash value, which is the small number, but the big death benefit number while you're alive, tax-free on long-term care. So you can take something that you already have repurpose it to do double duty for you. If you have life insurance currently and you're not sure whether or not you have this accelerated death benefit rider, chances are it could be added for little to no cost to an existing policy. That would be a great reason to pick up the phone or shoot us an email and reach out to us, and we'll do a little bit of research with you with your life insurance provider to see if this is something you have or something that you can get for little to no cost. So the accelerated death benefit rider is the first insurance technique. The second insurance technique is what I would call traditional or pay-as-you-go long-term care insurance. Traditional or pay-as-you-go long-term care insurance is you pay a monthly premium. Some folks will opt for a quarterly or a semi-annual or annual premium, but you have premiums for the rest of your life. So you pay money into it, and if you need long-term care, it then provides a benefit. And the benefit is provided regardless of what level of care you're receiving or where you're receiving that care. So it could be benefits for home health care, it could be benefits for adult daycare, it could be benefits for full-time long-term care. Doesn't really matter, long-term care policies don't differentiate on that anymore. The traditional long-term care policy, though, does have some flaws. The first flaw is it can be expensive. Many insurance agents will actually recommend an overly large policy to their clients, and there's some selfish motivation behind that, but there's also some ignorance behind that as well, lack of knowledge. And the lack of knowledge is you don't have to buy a giant long-term care insurance policy to be able to cover yourself completely. The reason for that is Pennsylvania has become a partnership state. What that means is Pennsylvania will effectively match dollar for dollar what you buy in long-term care insurance through the Medicaid system by exempting your investments in an equal amount. In other words, you don't have to buy full coverage, you only have to buy about half coverage, or coverage that's roughly equal to the amount of investments you want to protect and shield. This way it becomes proportionate to the size of your portfolio, which makes it affordable. So you don't need to buy a giant long-term care policy in order to get the job done. A small policy is better than no policy at all. So the Pennsylvania Partnership Program is a tremendous benefit that not a lot of folks are aware of, and it encourages you to go ahead and at least get some level of coverage. But even at just some level of coverage, you're still adding a new bill to your life. And a lot of retirees really focus on minimizing bills. They pay off houses, they pay off cars, they prepay everything they can so that they have the bare minimum of bills in retirement. So they're not looking forward to another bill in the form of a long-term care insurance premium. If you or a family member has given something away or is thinking about giving something away, and you'd like help calculating the penalty period for Medicaid benefits in your family situation, well, reach out to us. Give us a call or send us an email. That brings me to asset-based long-term care insurance. I simply call it the combination policy. I call it the combination policy because it simply combines the benefits of a fixed annuity with the benefits of a life insurance policy and the benefits of a long-term care insurance policy. Regardless of what happens in your life, you're not going to lose your money. You're going to get your money back. So if you deposit a lump sum into one of these policies, which is the way they're designed to work, generally speaking, it's a minimum of $50,000 per person. So you deposit $50,000 one time into one of these policies. All of that $50,000 goes to cash value. The cash value then earns a guaranteed level of interest. Currently, that level of interest is 4%. Now, you're not taking that 4% out and spending it, you're leaving the 4% in the policy and letting the insurance company use that 4% to buy you coverage. So with the interest off of that $50,000, they're able to buy you roughly $60,000 worth of life insurance and $180,000 worth of long-term care insurance. So win, lose, or quit, you're at least going to get your money back. So when you put the $50,000 in, you never need long-term care. When you pass away, your beneficiaries get $60,000 tax-free. Quit. You put $50,000 in, you decide you don't want this thing anymore. You send a letter to the insurance company and they send you a check back for $50,000. Or lose. You put $50,000 in and you need long-term care. Well, you have $180,000 worth of benefits, roughly speaking, from the insurance company, plus an additional $180,000 of your investments is exempted. In other words, you're allowed to keep $180,000 in investments and still qualify for Medicaid or medical assistance. So that policy basically does double duty. You're able to really protect and shield, get about 180 times 2 or $360,000 worth of total benefits by simply setting $50,000 aside. It's not even money that's spent to you, it's just being stored in a different pocket. So now you can see why I say that the combination policy, also known as the asset-based long-term care, is really my favorite technique for using insurance when it comes to the long-term care issue. So when it comes to long-term care, Medicaid takes a look at your assets, and there's certain assets which they exempt. They allow you to keep them. Married couples are allowed to keep their home up to a value of $600,000. So if your house is worth more than $600,000, you should probably reach out to a financial advisor like myself or a certified elder law attorney to talk a little bit more about how to protect and shield that, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Medicaid also allows you to keep one vehicle of any value as long as it's licensed, inspected, and improved for highway usage. But all other tangible assets like second homes, rental properties, cabins, mountain ground, condos at the beach, all of those types of things, unfortunately, are what they call over-resourced, something that it's not exempt, something that they do make you liquidate so as to use those proceeds to pay for long-term care. They call it spending down. So unfortunately, all of those types of hard assets must be spent down. That brings me to an asset protection trust. A trust is simply something that you create along with an attorney. It's an entity that owns things. Now, you would no longer own the second home or the rental properties or the classic cars or the mountain ground or the condo at the beach or what have you. The trust would own it. But the trust has to be manned by people. It has to be staffed by people. Somebody has to be in charge of running the trust. That is the trustee. So you would appoint somebody that you, trust as your trustee. Usually it would be a child or a grandchild, a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law, somebody who's good with money and good with finances that you really trust to be the trustee. And you as the donor, the person who created the trust, who put the assets into the trust, you can actually hire and fire the trustee. It's called a hanging power. It's a power that you hang on to. So while you technically no longer own it, and while you technically no longer control it, you actually do still have all the benefits of an owner, and you actually are the boss of the boss. So being the boss's boss, it's like being the boss. So setting up these asset protection trusts will protect these other pieces of real estate and these other vehicles in the event of a long-term care need. Now, don't confuse an asset protection trust with a living trust or a revocable trust or a revocable living trust. Those types of trusts don't work for this. An asset protection trust is an entity that you create along with a certified elder law attorney. It has its own tax ID number separate from you, so it doesn't use your social security number. It also has its own birth date separate from you, the date that the trust was created. So it's own separate legal entity. This separate legal entity is then gifted assets by you. You donate these assets, you're the donor, you donate the assets to the trust. The trust then owns those assets, and provided the assets have been in there long enough, they are now safe and secure inside the trust. And no creditor, whether it's for long-term care or anything else, can reach in there and pull those assets out to pay bills of yours. So the Asset Protection Trust is great for holding those hard, tangible assets like classic cars, like rental properties, like beach houses, like mountain grounds or cabins or things like that. Now there's some misconceptions around this. When you put the money or put the assets into the trust, it is considered a gift or a donation. You're the donor, you're putting money into the trust, and that does trigger the penalty period. The penalty period is an amount of time from which you are eliminated from being able to receive long-term care. It's roughly $130,000 donated to a trust, eliminates you from the ability to receive medical assistance or Medicaid benefits for paying long-term care for 1 year. So for every $130,000 into the trust, you have to go 1 year without needing any type of benefits from the state for long-term care for that money to be safely in the trust. Now, if your property is worth more than, let's say, $650,000, let's say it's worth $1 million, and it's a beach house at Avalon or Stone Harbor or what have you, those properties have really shot up in value. If you donate one of those properties that's worth $1 million to the trust, it's not like the penalty period is longer than 5 years. That's the maximum. A lot of people misspeak and they say, oh, I heard there's a 5-year look back. That's not really accurate. It's a penalty period of up to 5 years. So if you were to donate this property worth $1 million to this trust, you then have to be able to pay for your own long-term care without relying on medical assistance or Medicaid for the next 5 years. Once the 5-year mark is passed, you're perfectly fine. So the Asset Protection Trust is a great technique for protecting an unlimited amount of assets. It's just something that you don't want to do last minute in a crisis situation. You want to do it ahead of time while everybody's still well and healthy. So the Asset Protection Trust is another great way of protecting and shielding your assets in the event of long-term care. So if you'd like to learn more, just give me a call at 1-800-482-4720 or email info@taylorretirementservices.com. I'd be honored to see if there's any way I can help. Another technique for protecting and shielding assets in the event of long-term care is a burial reserve account. A burial reserve account is like a savings account where you take some money and you set it aside in order to preserve it even if there is a long-term care need for at the end of your days for any final expenses. The definition of final expense is pretty loose, so it can be used for a lot of different things at the end of your days. The burial reserve account, though, does have a limit depending upon the county you live in, from anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 per person that you can put into a burial reserve account. So it's a good technique, but it is limited to that $10,000 to $20,000 a year. Another technique that can be used in the event of long-term care is the spousal annuity technique. The spousal annuity technique is a technique in which married couples use annuities to protect and shield their investments. You can actually protect and shield an unlimited amount of investments using the spousal annuity technique if you're a married person. Now, more on that in our follow-up video, which is crisis planning when it comes to long-term care. So even though this is a technique that can be done ahead of time, it is also a technique that works well in the event of a crisis. Also in that video, you'll be interested to learn about a technique called the half-a-loaf technique, which is a technique that single folks can use even in a crisis situation for protecting and shielding money from long-term care. So there you have it. There's about 9 different techniques for ways that you can put barriers between your health and your wealth if you should ever need long-term care. You've got the having the kids take care of you. You've got the continuing care retirement community. You've got the 3 different types of insurance, the life insurance with the accelerated death benefit rider, the long-term care insurance, remember the Pennsylvania Partnership Program, and the combination policy. Remember, it's funded with a single lump sum, so you never need to add money to it again, and they can never lower your benefits. The next technique we talked about was the Asset Protection Trust, which is a great way of sheltering things like rental properties and classic cars and beach houses and things like that. There's the spousal annuity technique, which can be used by married folks to protect an unlimited amount of money. And then you've got the burial reserve account, which is allowing you to set money aside that can't be taken away. And then the half a loaf technique, which is a crisis planning technique for single folks. So there you have it, several different ways that you can put barriers between your health and your wealth. Not sure which one of these would be right for you and your family? Well, reach out to us at Taylor Retirement Services. We'd be happy to help.